Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hello, Renegade Thinkers. One of the things we don't talk enough about on this show is what I'll call CMO math. As the CMO, you serve multiple stakeholders, all of whom have their own agendas and thus their own yardsticks. Your CEO and board undoubtedly is interested in revenue growth, and if you're public, share price comes into play. Your partners in sales are hungry for qualified leads, so we'll measure you based on your contribution to pipeline. Your distribution partners measure you based on ease of sale, customer satisfaction, and of course, revenue contributions. Your customers show their pleasure by renewal rates, referrals, and references. And employees have their own measures, often expressed in longevity, Glassdoor ratings, and recruiting efforts. And of course, thinking personally, CMO math shows up in how long you get to stay in the CMO chair. 2 years? 4 years? Longer? So let me share the CMO math of my guest today. In his 9 years at Service Express, revenue has grown from $30 million to $130 million. That's over 4x revenue growth. That's a good number. Marketing's contribution to the qualified lead pipeline is 70%. Now, on a recent episode, a CMO said that the average marketing contribution to pipeline was 15 to 20%. And on another show, a CMO expressed delight for raising marketing's contribution to 40%. So 70% is really high. And here's the kicker. On the ServiceExpress.com website, you'll see their Q4 2019 Net Promoter Score is 90. Wait, stop the presses, 90. That is ridiculously high. So with that kind of CMO math, you can see why I'm delighted to welcome Josh Leatherman, CMO of Service Express, to the show. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's really cool that you're here at Renegade's World Headquarters in New York City. 9 years on the job. Take us back to 2011. What was the situation when you arrived?
When I arrived, Service Express was $30 million in revenue. We essentially did not have a marketing program. Okay, so we had kind of a what looked like a 1990s type website, and our president and CEO at the time, Ron Elvesteffer, had a vision for marketing, and that was to drive qualified leads to our sales team. When I started in 2011, our sales team was having a tough time getting a hold of prospects. We had a top of funnel problem, and we knew if we invested a little bit in demand marketing, we could essentially front load the top of the funnel and help the sales team out.
So you get there. Let's talk about, where do you start? I mean, you've got marketing is not really contributing or holding its weight. What were some of the first things that you did in that situation to figure out, there's a lot of problems to solve. Which one did you say was the top priority?
Yeah, I'd say, so the top priority was first and foremost getting a website that was optimized for form fills and lead conversion. We did not have that at the time. I'd say secondly, it was getting a CRM that worked for us. We had a homegrown system at the time, and it was an electronic Rolodex for our salespeople. And if you truly want marketing and other teams to be on the field helping the sales team, you really need a system that integrates well with MarTech, other sales technologies, and one where sales and marketing can mutually contribute to the buyer's journey, right?
So what did you end up using for CRM?
So we started with Pardot, and then we purchased Salesforce, which back then, Pardot was not owned by Salesforce, right? So Pardot was our marketing automation tool, and Salesforce quickly became our CRM.
Okay. So you needed to have a catcher's mitt, if you will, to catch the leads and manage the data. That's certainly part one of being able to have some CMO math, because if you don't have a CRM and you don't have a marketing automation system, it's kind of tough to measure. So then at some point you have to start driving leads, right? I mean, you can't, it's not like any of those investments created demand or created traffic. What were some of the things that you started to do to get people to come to the website so that you actually could get some, leads?
Yeah, so the first thing we determined that we needed to do was build awareness in our category. Our primary competition is the OEM, the big guys, and there's very little awareness that there is a company like Service Express or a category of companies out there that do what we do. So the first thing I wanted to do was work with the team to build valuable content that we could share and educate our buyers with. We didn't want to just spam them with email, So, we built content, and then we leveraged at that time our marketing automation system to create a strong outbound marketing program that got the content out there.
Yep, I realized that while I was talking about all the numbers, I never actually explained what Service Express does. You manage sort of server farms, right? And so a lot of these servers, we had Jennifer Deutsch on the show from Park Place Technology. It's somewhat similar to what they do, right? I mean, all of these servers are like a Dell or whatever, and their warranties run out, and they needed to be managed. Is that sort of essentially what we're doing?
Yeah, that's spot on. So typically the OEM will sell, they're in the business of selling hardware, right? So IBM, EMC, Dell, they will sell you servers, typically with a 3 to 5 year warranty. The useful life of that hardware is 7 to 10 years. And so what we do is we come in and we say, you do not have to buy new hardware after 3 or 5 years when that lapses. We'll take over the servicing of that equipment, and we will increase your service and reduce your costs. Okay,
so it's a pretty good deal for the clients. And is this about a share battle, or is this about building the category?
This is all about building the category. If you put, we're called a third-party maintenance provider. And if you took in North America and put all the third-party maintenance providers together, we would be less than 10%, probably less than 7-ish% of the total addressable market. So it's really about the category.
Okay, a lot of upside. So I just imagine there's a VC listening who's just doing a roll-up of all of you right now, thinking about that. And that would certainly be an interesting play. Okay, so far we're talking about some pretty basic blocking and tackling, right? In the last 9 years, has there been a program or a methodology or something that you've done that you think has really made a huge difference in driving the business forward?
Absolutely. I would say the alignment of several teams. My mandate when I came in was to build a great demand marketing team that drives leads at the top of the funnel. I realized when we started to build that team and we sent leads through, we had a field sales team that had a difficult time following up on those leads. Some of them were poor leads. Some of them were good leads. They didn't know which was good, which was poor, right? So I realized I had to build a sales development team who would follow up on those leads that marketing was bringing in within 5 minutes, because we learned that our prospects are like 800% more likely to pick up the phone if we are calling them within 5 minutes of the lead coming through. So I would say the alignment and creation of our sales development team who is fielding those inbound leads, and then also our revenue operations team, which is sales ops and marketing ops rolled into one team. We have a very robust technology stack. Increasingly, you see it. CMOs are spending more money on technology than anyone else in the organization. But too often, its marketing teams are responsible for the deployment, implementation, integration of those systems, and they should not be. So we have a dedicated RevOps team who is, I like to call it Switzerland, right? So when sales and marketing are fighting in a healthy way about the quality of leads or a process, we have a great revenue operations team, and our team is, I think we're 9 or 10 people right now, and they're Salesforce certified people, they're Marketo certified people. This is a team that objectively looks at the systems and the data, and they are Switzerland for us. They, they have a dotted line of responsibility to me and to our chief revenue officer.
Really interesting. There's so many things that I want to dive into in this area, and I think the best thing to do will be to take a break and then come back and dive into, building a RevOps team makes a lot of sense. Building a field, a sales development team, a field team, all those things make a lot of sense, and I want to talk about the challenges that you went through to get that done. We'll be right back. Hey, it's Drew, and I wanted to have a quick conversation about turning lemons into lemonade. Here are the lemons. Skiing, Park City, January 11th, third day, last run, going fast. Light was bad, a lot of snow on the ground. 50 yards from the bottom, I crashed and burned. Literally tumbling down the mountain, did a 3-point landing with my head and 2 thumbs. Broke the right thumb, sprained the left thumb, finished up surgery 5 days later. And now I have a little extra time on my hands. What do? I finish a special report that I've been dying to finish for a long time, which is a way for me to get to my next book. It's a preview of the book. You can find it on renegade.com. On the very beginning of the homepage at the top, there's a banner that says B2B Special Report. I would love it if you took a look at this and let me know what you thought. I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. Okay, we're back, and this is a show that's really dedicated to CMO math, if you will, and if you're a regular listener, you know I'm always trying to simplify these things because complexity is not our friend. So you recognized that there was a problem in the ability to manage, process, and qualify leads. So you decided to develop you called it a field...
Sales development.
A sales development, yes, SDT. And talk a little bit about what it took to get that in place. Was that a hard sell? And why, sales guy might say, well, why is that under marketing?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, it was not a hard sell because I had a CEO, a president and CEO who was an ally of mine. I have colleagues who do not have that, and so it's very difficult to get investment because in order to create a sales development team, a revenue operations team, if you want an effective technology stack, it takes investment, right? And it costs money, and you've got to be able to articulate what you believe the return will be. So, I'll just start there. You really have to have an executive team who buys into it.
Right, and that's true for everything. No CMO succeeds without a CEO right behind them. So you get permission to start the sales dev team. You have to hire these people who are different than others that are on your thing. They have different skill sets, and frankly, they probably have different metrics. But let's talk a little bit about what were some of the challenges as you were developing these things, some of the lessons that you learned about developing a sales dev team.
I think what I learned is you cannot place high enough in importance on the agility and the ability to pivot, because when we started, the metric for success for us was number of meetings scheduled, right? And so how you measure people is how they're going to drive performance and fill their days, right? And so that was a great place for us to start, but we had to move the ball, because what we found is we had great people who ended up scheduling lots of meetings with unqualified people. So we had to start looking at, okay, number of meetings is an important metric, but how much sales qualified pipeline are those meetings driving to the sales team?
I think that's such an interesting and instructive thing. And this is where data gets, there's a lot of emphasis on leads, for example. And let's face it, not all leads are good leads, and not all meetings are good meetings just because you have it. And the clear understanding is that what you measure and what you pay for is what you're going to get is, I think, so important. A big punctuation point on that. So you switched the metrics, and what was the metric that you started to look at?
Yeah, I think, the metric that we have really moved to over the course of, because there's two different ways we use numbers, right? There's the way we look at numbers to drive our business and to execute on strategy. And then there's the way we use numbers to report up to investors and the executive team. And those are two very different scenarios. And I think a lot of my colleagues get into this trap of using the metrics that we use to execute and drive our strategy. They try and report those to bankers, investors, and executives, right? And the executives and bankers go, I have no idea what this means. What is a lead versus a marketing qualified lead? What do you mean by impressions? What do you mean by click-through rates? And frankly, a lead from one channel, display advertising, is going to be very different than a lead from another channel like content syndication. So we have to simplify it for our audience and understand and recognize that we have multiple audiences that we're speaking to.
Right, and love that. So let's focus for a second on the executive metrics. So, right, we marketers tend to talk about SQLs and MQLs and all that other stuff. What are the metrics that matter at least to your executive team and investors?
So at the end of the day, I want to be able to articulate to my investors, if they give me $1, how many dollars in pipeline am I going to be able to give back to them? How many dollars in monthly recurring revenue am I going to be able to give back to them? And, we know our lifetime value. We know how long we keep customers, and we're able to understand how we can say to investors, if you give me $1, I'll give you this back in pipeline.
And okay, so lifetime value, LTV, is an important calculation to be able to have, because that allows you to figure out how much you can spend to acquire a customer cost effectively. I love the notion of being able to say, if you give me $1, I'll give you 4x, right? That's a nice return, or I'll give you 10x. If that's the case, at which point a smart CFO and a smart board will say, all right, well, if you can do that, I'm going to give you unlimited dollars until you can't. Are you there?
We are with private equity, and I would say we are as close to being there as we can. And I love where you're going, because we lived in a state where marketing was a cost center, right? How much am I going to be expected to pay for marketing this year and next year? Now, you're exactly right. We've got an independent board member who's done a fantastic job kind of advising and counseling me, and he has really ingrained it in my head and in the board's head that marketing is an investment with a strong return. We need to understand what that ceiling is, and we need to push our investment all the way up to that ceiling. Particularly in private equity, when you've typically got, a 5-ish year life with them, and we're in a monthly recurring revenue business, years 1 and 2, we need to go all in on demand marketing and make sure we're maximizing that investment.
So a little part of me, whenever we have these math conversations, starts to sort of quiver. And the quiver part, and maybe I'll save this for the third segment, is short-termism versus long-termism. And one of the ways that organizations start to fail is all the emphasis is on acquisition, right? We just got to get them in. If we can get them in, we can show momentum, we can show revenue. But there's another important metric is we got to get the right customers in, right? And I'm curious how you've been able to manage that, walk that tight rope of we want to increase demand, but we don't want to get the wrong customers in here. And there are wrong customers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we measure customer profitability. We're very fortunate as well to have partnered with, and we are currently partnering with private equity firms who are not interested in short-term gains at the sacrificing long-term company growth, right? They have said from time and time again, and our executive team has said, we're playing the long game. We will build the strongest organization and make the right decisions now. We're not going to increase investment up front and then taper back. Like, we are we're in it for the long game. We're going to build the best company we can and make decisions for the long run.
Interesting. I may have to retract my comment that PE is the devil. It sounds like at least the firms that's supporting your company is actually thinking that by building a real business and ultimately when they turn it over, they're not just turning over pretty books.
Yeah, and I think before we partnered with private equity, when I started, we were private. We did not have private equity, right? And we thought too that private equity was the devil. But what's neat about the partners we've had is they are partners who have bought into our strategic growth plan, which is a strong organic growth with some acquisition, and that organic growth is centered around demand marketing, sales development, a strong segmented sales strategy between field sales, inside sales, customer growth. They've bought into our strategy. We didn't just go kind of to the highest bidder,
Right. Okay. So we've talked about how you built this internal team to help qualify the leads so when you finally get it. And one of the numbers that I mentioned very early on was that I think it was 70% of pipeline is marketing driven. That's a humongous number. Talk about sort of how long did it take to get there, and what were some of the key learnings that you had in order to get there?
Yeah, so let me just clarify. It's 70% of new logo pipeline comes from marketing, which still is a huge, it still is a huge number. And we went from 0 to about 70%, and I attribute all of that to the alignment we have with demand marketing, the follow-up we get with sales development, and the checks and balances we have with our field sales and inside sales teams. When you look at the traditional sales and marketing funnel, right, every single prospect or customer in our CRM has a systematic way that they progress through. No one can progress through and get lost in a black hole, and that's so important because too many times sales and marketing are working in silos, and marketing hands off to sales, and somebody gets lost in that funnel. Again, our revenue operations team ensures that every account, every prospect has an owner. It starts in demand marketing, goes through sales development, goes through to our sales team, and sometimes we win them, and sometimes we recycle them and send them back to somebody else. But there is always an owner and a next step in that sales funnel.
Okay, so this is, as you called it, new logo pipeline. Is that the magic number in terms of if we had a group of CMOs here and they just needed from an acquisition standpoint, we won't talk about customer satisfaction or employees or brand for a moment, but if you had to pick one number to sort of say marketing's doing its job, is new logo pipeline the number?
I think it's different for different organizations, right? And for our organization, that is the right number because we have such little market share compared to what's available. So new logo acquisition, we have very strong teams who, once we get a customer in, build wallet share and come alongside our customer. We are starting to get into more wallet share and customer marketing, if you will. But I think for us in a market with such little awareness, that is really the holy grail for us, and that's where we started first.
Okay. All right. I'm with you because lots of the CMOs that we've had on the show have stated that as well. And I like its simplicity, and I like the fact that it takes a lot to get there. Right? There's a lot of things that have to happen before you can get to new logo pipeline. As you said, there's an infrastructure, there's a lot of data analysis and so forth. I also, the notion of creating a data Switzerland makes a lot of sense because that resolves the problem. You have a single source of truth. From a data standpoint. Another thing you said that I think was really important is that no leads get lost. And so there's owners. And again, that takes a meticulous approach. And one of the things that I rail on is this notion of too much tech. Right? And one of the things that's interesting is as you've gotten and built your tech stack, you've also built an organization around that to take advantage of it. And I think so often you find that they have, well, look, we've got a 20-strong tech stack, but we haven't added staff in 3 years. It's pretty problematic. So, all right, I think we've sort of covered this pretty well. Maybe you could just sort of quickly talk about how you've built your stack beyond, obviously it's now Marketo, not Pardot, and Salesforce, but what else is in that stack and how you've grown it?
Yeah, so we do, I'm proud to say we've got just incredibly talented marketers who specialize in R&D, which is rip off and duplicate to us, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We do a lot of company visits. We know that we've got vendors and partners who are doing fantastic digital marketing. And so we simply ask, and we travel to many organizations who are using good technology, good processes, and where applicable, we bring it back to Service Express. Where not applicable, we may try it. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work for us.
Perfect. There you have it. R&D is rip off and duplicate. Love that. Great place for us to take a break. We'll be right back. I'm back. I'm not going to talk about skiing, but I do want to talk about the special report that you will find on renegade.com. There is so much meat in this, in the 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy in 2020, that there are probably some folks out there that think I'm crazy to put that out there in front of a firewall. But I'm really hoping to get feedback from some of you all on the report, perhaps what's missing, because again, the book is going to be developed against this outline, but fleshing it out. There might be some guests that could help fill in some of the areas. You may disagree with some of the things. I'm really interested in your opinion on this piece, and your engagement with it will really help make the book that much stronger. So you'll find it on renegade.com. Very top, there's a banner that says 12 steps to a more effective B2B brand strategy. Take a look. All right, we're back. And we've been talking about R&D as in rip off and duplicate. Love that. Okay, what you didn't say is what else is on top of the stack, and what would be interesting to me if there's is there technology that you've tried and then abandoned?
I think there are a lot of tools we've tried and abandoned. I think one of the most important functions of our revenue operations team is the idea of this solutions architect. We try it before we buy it, and we really, we articulate from a marketing and sales point, here's the problem we have. We try not to come to them with, I want this technology, right? We articulate the need that we have. and they are responsible for going out and finding the best solution for sales and marketing. And I just say the other component to technology is the data behind it. Technology is only as good as the quality of data that you are using right behind it. And so our revenue operations team really focuses on filling out and qualifying that data so that our sales dev and sales teams and marketing teams don't have to qualify people before they're sending things out. But we have, we've got a robust tech stack of probably 20 or so technologies that all tie into the Salesforce ecosystem. Of course, Marketo, Salesforce are the two big ones. But we have sales enablement tools, Cadence software for our sales development team. We have pipeline management and deal management tools for our outside sales team. We've got a lot of technology that we're using.
It's unbelievable. Okay, so one of the numbers that I highlighted in the intro was your Net Promoter Score of 90. And when you and I talked on the phone, I said, okay, one, that's impossible. It's too good to be true. And there's no upside with a number like that. But let's go back to when you first measured NPS several years ago, I'm imagining. What was the score, and what were some of the things that you did to improve?
Yeah, I think, first of all, when we started measuring it, I think we were 79 or 80, if I recall. So we were high then, right? And I think there's a couple of things. The average Net Promoter Score for a IT buyer is like 21 in the data center, right? So the bar is pretty low. But our purpose as an organization is to provide the best experience for our customers, partners, and employees. And so we are all about experience, right? And so that permeates everything we do. When our engineers go on site, they are fantastic, and they are not just there to fix a problem. They're there to ensure that our customers feel like they've had a wow experience, right? So the Net Promoter Score is fantastic. I think you can go to Gartner Peer Insights. I think our customers, we are the highest rated TPM on Gartner. Our customers, that's kind of another way to validate what we're doing. If you look at Glassdoor, we've got an outstanding reputation there. So I think what I'm saying is don't take my word for it.
Right. Well, no, it's nice to have the validation. But so let's talk about Glassdoor, because that's employees, and that's a metric of, that this is a company that people enjoy working at. What kinds of things from a marketing standpoint have you sort of weighed into to sort of help get those numbers up and make employee satisfaction part of the marketing challenge?
Yeah, I would say, it starts with a talent pipeline. So we treat, as a growing organization, we've got demand generation for sales, but we also have demand generation for our talent, because we are only as good as our pipeline of talent, right? So we try not to jump on Gartner or Glassdoor and participate in the ratings. What we really do is we try to bring in the right people, create a wonderful culture in which they can grow and thrive, where we give them opportunity. And I think that's really how we affect that score.
So I'm going to go back to something you said about wow, trying to create wow experiences. I mean, I understand Zappos, that the way they've built wow into theirs, and, they're just selling shoes. But we're talking about servers and maintenance. What does a wow experience mean?
It's the people you interact with. Our tagline literally is people-powered data center solutions, right? So there's two things we do really well. One is data center solutions. That's easy for us, we feel. Where I think we differentiate ourselves is we just have outstanding, talented people who want to serve others. They want to create that experience. And so we are very vigilant in the hiring process and making sure that someone's values align with ours, and they're interested in not just a job, but creating some kind of experience for our customers. And we also know if we treat our employees better than anyone else, like they're going to treat our customers better than anyone else, right?
So happy employees equal happy customers. It's so true, and it's so easy to say, but there are lots of companies out there that don't have happy employees, and you can see it. And it's a lot of it is a lack of purpose in the organization. There's a culture of quarterly revenue growth and not sort of how do we at least we're in it for our people. Maybe we're in it to make the world a better place. I want to explore this line, people-powered data center solutions. What's really interesting about the line, my observation is there's some immediate sort of people-powered, because we're talking data center solutions, right? And that's, when you think about great lines, there's a little bit of conflict there. There's a little bit of, stopping power. So what does people-powered mean? Because, in truth, they're powered by electricity. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice turn of phrase. I'm curious how you actually bring that idea of people-power to life.
It starts with our core value, which is it's a very unique, I think, core value. It's to help our people achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals. And again, it gets back to if we know if we take care of our people, they'll take care of our customers, right? So as a growing organization, we know that first of all, our goal is not to grow for the sake of growth. It's not to maximize shareholder value. It is to create opportunity for our employees, for our people. And if our leaders go to bat and understand our people in such a way, they know what they want to make in 5 years. They know that what position or they want to participate in the company as a company grows. We can have very thoughtful conversations with our people, and we'll retain them. And that retention pays off as well with our customers.
And it's coming together for me now, and it's interesting. A lot of times, when people hear the term purpose and purpose-driven marketing, they immediately leap to what I call big P, which is the planet and helping the world at large. But I think the little p here of people is also really profound. It's also a little hard to believe in the sense that, wait, you're in business for your employees? And I've seen it in some cases, like Vanguard talks about, well, we're in it, it's investor owned. And so I think that's an interesting perspective for them. And I think I've mentioned on the show, although Stephen Handmaker from Assurance has never been on the show, I interviewed him probably 5 years ago, they're very much about taking an insurance company and making it about the employees. And I'm curious, there's a certain skepticism that people might have. Wait, you're really focused on your people? How do you make sure that, in fact, it's a promise, but that you're delivering on it? And maybe you give an example of something that you think you're doing differently with your employees.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, if you are truly concerned about, not just giving platitudes and talking about it, but making sure it's institutionalized, then you measure it, right? And so we measure everything. But one of the things that's important to us is employee engagement. How engaged are our people with their teams and with what we do? And so, we have employee engagement scores and surveys. And we hone in on areas where our people say, hey, we're missing the ball here. It could be internal communication or whatever. Like we really care, and we want to understand where we're missing it as an employer. And we also we start every meeting with our core, whether it's a board meeting, internal meetings, we start every meeting with our core value to help our people achieve their personal, professional, and financial goals, right? So we've institutionalized that. You could go to Service Express in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and ask anyone what our core value is, and they'd be able to recite it word for word. I think those are some of the important signs that something's really organically taken hold in the organization.
What's amazing to me is that we've circled all the way back to CMO Math. And I think that if you take away one insight here, it's probably not real unless you're measuring it. because you're not getting from here to there without it. And I fought that notion because not everything is measurable, but employee engagement, certainly the fact that just knowing that employees can cite the values says that, okay, that's one. And then, of course, that they hold you accountable to, okay, well, you say it's personal, professional, and financial goals. Great. Let's talk about those and let's make sure they're real. So we're measuring that. And when you say we measure employee engagement, I'm curious, what does that look like? Talk a little bit about we know what Net Promoter Score is, but there are a lot of different ways of measuring employee engagement. What do you think are the sort of key questions or ways of knowing that you really do have an engaged employee base?
Yeah, we ask questions about, we have internal processes. So our core value is, we've got processes where our people list their personal, professional, financial goals on our intranet system, and our leaders have access to that, to view that, and they, at least 2 times a year, are sitting down and having discussions with them about that. But we ask, are your leaders doing what we say that they're supposed to be doing? How do you feel about your team? How do you feel about the leadership team? Where can we improve? Do you feel like we want to make sure that we're communicating from the top down. We simply ask them, do you feel like you're receiving all the information you need to help grow our company? We've probably got like 80 different questions that are categorized into communication and engagement and growth and things like that we're asking.
Okay. Pausing to think about this, one of the things that we have been pushing a lot, and every client that works with Renegade goes through this, where you must do an employee survey at the beginning of an engagement so that we can benchmark it at the end. And we do have a number of questions that I think get around the idea of engagement, but I suspect in order to really have a good number, you need some kind of blended metric. Right, and to me, a blended metric that there is such a thing as ENPS. I'm not sure it's that good. We've used it a couple times, and the scores it's like, so what? And you end up looking at all the other questions anyway. The notion of there's also what are they? Glassdoor is a really quick way to look. Retention rates are really good. Turnover, right? Recruiting, sort of employee brand also is how many of the people that you interview accept, right? That's a yield number that sort of shows up in brand. But if we're looking at employee engagement, I'm still sort of a little fuzzy as the exact questions that we might ask to get at that at a really like a score. Right? What would be? Give me 2 questions that you think if we asked all the employees in the company, it's not about do they feel the company has a purpose. It's really about, because when I think about engagement, I'm on the board of Duke Alumni Association, and we look at engagement. But did you attend an event? Did you open an email? Those are kind of engagement with the university. But engagement with a company is very different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one, I'll give you one that there can be several variations on this, but I think one critical one is, do you know how your job is measured, your performance is measured? Because there are a lot of people who show up to work and they just don't, they're waiting for their annual review to annual review. They don't know how to objectively say, I am doing well. Or I'm not doing well, and they don't know how what they do matters to the business as a whole, right? And so I think one question to ask to understand how engaged an employee is with the business and in their mission and their service is, do you understand how what you do is measured?
Yeah, I think that's a great place. Okay, we're going to wrap up this episode. We've talked about key metrics that matter. A couple of insights that I think are important is recognizing that the metrics that you use in your department and with sales are going to be different than the ones that you present to the board. That CMO speak versus CEO and CFO speak, CFO and CEO speak is all about revenue, lifetime value. It's about things that will show up on the bottom line, even if they're top line measures. Okay, so that's sort of one is recognizing that. Two, having an independent source of truth. What a smart idea, because that takes away the battle between sales and marketing. Three, getting a internal sales qualifying group under marketing, because then that takes all the excuse. Then you don't have to have hunters anymore. All you have to do is have farmers who can do it, and that's, there's a lot of financial value to that too. It also aligns everybody. We talked about customer satisfaction and NPS as a score, but we also talked about lifetime value and why that's such a great long-term metric. Okay, and then last week we spent a lot of time talking about employees and alignment with purpose. And what was interesting in this conversation to me was that it was little p people, which is not a little thing at all. That's your biggest investment is your people. And if you can get them to understand what the values of the company are, what the goals of the company are, and show how the company goals are the people goals, you have a really good chance of creating a special company. So thank you so much for being on the show, Josh. I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to my close?
No, I just, I appreciate you having me. I just think we are hiring right now. So if I can just give a plug, right? So my marketing team is hiring, our sales development and sales teams are hiring. If anyone is out there listening going, I want a culture like that, I'm not working in an engaging culture, I just encourage them to go to serviceexpress.com/careers.
That's there you have it. All right. Well, I have a favor for you all listeners. Would love it if you went to your favorite podcast channel and gave us a rating on the show. That's our open door. We look for those ratings. It would be awesome if you took that time. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, you know how to get a hold of me. Give me ideas for future shows. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.